In this video, we'll talk about the notation we'll be using through the course. Vector for a two-dimensional space or vector in three-dimensional space. First of all, what is a vector? A vector is basically directed line segment. What is a line segment? Like this, right? Draw a straight line, take a segment from it. Directed, meaning it is the information of the direction. So this will be a vector going from this point to this point. Okay? And how do we denote it? I can say this is a vector u. But this looks like a scalar, like u equals 2 or u equals 3. I want to emphasize that this is not a number. So what I can do is I can put a vector on top of the letter u, or I can use a bold notation. Okay, so these are common ways to denote a vector u. Then I can say, okay, suppose I have a vector u equals 2, 3. Then what does this mean? This is then a vector from the origin to the point. So this is a point, 2, 3, and this is a vector. Okay? So sometimes you will see people use this notation 2, 3. They're the same as long as you understand this is a vector, not a point. Then you can abuse the notation. All right. So if I wanna plot out this vector, then what do I have? I have by default, it starts from the origin 0, 0, and I look for the point 2, 3. So 2 units in the x direction, 3 units in the y direction. 2, 3 is here. Therefore, the vector u is this guy. Okay? All right. So question, if I have vector v being, let's say, 3, 2, can you plot vector v? Okay. Try to see if we can work this out. So by the definition here, we know v is the vector starting from the origin and goes to the point 3, 2. Where is it 3, 2? 3 in the x direction, 2 in the y direction. So this is vector v. Okay? Like that. Now what if I wanna have a vector in three-dimensional space? So let's say I have vector u being vector 1, 2, 3. What does this mean then? Think about it. So this will mean a direct line segment in the three-dimensional space from the origin to this endpoint at 1, 2, 3. So to plot this, I first need to have a three-dimensional coordinate chart that's called an XYZ coordinate chart. Right. So now to plot this vector, I start from the origin. Let me give this a grid. 1, 2, 3. 1, 2, 3. Okay. So it goes along the x direction by 1 unit. Right? And goes along the y direction 2 units and goes up by 3 units. So this is the point 1, 2, 3. Okay, therefore the vector I have here is this one, vector u from 0, 0, 0 to the point 1, 2, 3. That's the vector 1, 2, 3. Okay. Again, question for you. Plot vector v equal 2, 1, 3. So what's your answer? I will be looking for the vector starting from the origin, goes along the x direction by 2 units, y direction by 1 unit, and z direction by 3 units. So it's 1 unit, 2 unit, 3 units. So it's like this. This is the v vector 2, 1, 3. Okay. Do you have it? Now you know how to denote and write a vector in a 2-dimensional space or the 3-dimensional space. Now let's talk about standard unit vectors. So again, this is just notation. In R2, we have the vector 1, 0 and the vector 0, 1 as our standard unit vectors. So I will write I, okay, so I'm not using U, V, W, I use specifically I, over I with a vector on top to denote the vector in the x direction, 1, 0. And I use the vector j, or j with a little arrow on top, to denote the vector 0, 1. So this one. So this is my unit vector I. This is my vector j. So we call this unit, this vectors standard unit vectors. Unit just means the length of this vector is 1. As you can see, it doesn't go along the y direction at all, and it travels along the x direction by 1 unit. So we know the length of this vector is 1. Similarly, the length of this vector j is also 1. Okay, what about R3? So R3, I have 3 directions: the x direction, y direction, and z direction. And you can guess what would be the standard unit vectors in R3. So the first one would be this, so that's 1, 0, 0, because 1 unit in their x direction. Second one's this, so 1 unit in y direction. And the third one is this, 0, 0, 1. Okay, so what's notation for that? Again, I would be for the 1, 0, 0, and j would be for 0, 1, 0, and the last one I will use k. K is a unit vector in the z direction. Okay, so if I now say vectors I and the k, you should know which vectors I'm talking about. I, by notation, it means the vector 1, 0, 0, and k is the unit vector 0, 0, 1. Okay? Of course, I have to tell you which space I'm talking about. So if it's in R3, then I will have 3 components. If it's in R2, let's say if I say I want to have a vector j in R2, then what is that? It'll be the unit vector in the y direction. And if I say I'm looking for a vector j in R3, without telling you the coordinates, you know that j should be the vector in y direction, but it has x, y, z 3 components, like that. Okay, so now you know the standard unit vectors we use for both R2 and R3. Okay, so they're the same, basically. That's it for the notation.